Hi, everyone, and welcome to Wine.com Experiences. I'm Gwendolyn Osborne. Today, we are talking with Saskia Rothschild, the chairperson of Domaine Baron de Rothschild. We're very excited to be speaking with her. We're glad you've joined us today from home. For those of you who pre-purchased the wines or bought them beforehand, fantastic. Go ahead and get those opened. Find a glass or two to enjoy. We are tasting through all four wines. I realize that might be a bit much for some of you if you're only one or two people at home. Totally fine if you just want to open one or two, because this video, as is all of our videos, will be available on the Wine.com YouTube channel going forward. So taste a couple today, come back in a couple days with the other two, whatever works for you. And now I would love to introduce to you Saskia Rothschild. Welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Saskia. And I know it's late. You're in Bordeaux. I think it's 11 p.m. there. We're obviously here on a sunny California day in my jardin. So thank you for taking the time to join us late night.
No problem. Always a good excuse to have a glass of wine at 11 p.m.
And why not? Yes, of course. It's a very good excuse. So you took over the helm of Domaine Baron de Rothschild just 2 years ago, and becoming the youngest to ever lead a first growth Bordeaux and the first woman to lead your own organization. And that is very impressive. But I'm also really fascinated with what you did before taking on this role. Could you tell us just a little kind of brief description of your journalist days, kind of what you saw, where you went?
Well, as a journalist, I had the chance to study at Columbia, to go to the graduate school of journalism. So that was really helpful in understanding good journalism, because in the US, you know how to fact check and you know how to actually do proper journalism. So it was a great school. And I went on to work for the New York Times. I worked in the Paris office and then for West Africa. So I was covering basically prisons, politics, terrorist attacks, and a lot of very interesting things that allowed me to have an open eye on what was happening and to be curious. And so I think it's a good career to have before you go into working in any corporate world, because it allows you to really ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, and probably meet some really incredible people along the way as well. That was just so, I did not know that, and that was really, really interesting. Then you came back to wine and to this current role. How did you get here? Was that something you always knew you'd end up doing, being here at the head of Domaine Baron de Rothschild, or was that something your father and you talked about? How did it come about?
Well, I don't think I always knew I was going to do this. I always had a deep passion for wine, and we grew up, running in the vines in Pauillac and in the cellars and asking a million questions to the cellar maker. And so it was always part of my life, but it was really like a decision I made. And the day I thought I'm actually going to do this and take over for my father, to me, the most important part was I need to be legitimate in doing it. So that's why I went back to school and studied agriculture and enology. It's also, when you're 30 years old and you're a woman and you get into this world, to be legitimate in your position, I needed to know what I was doing. So it was really important to get a university background, and then to actually spend a lot of time in the estates, learning how to prune the vine, learning what goes on to everything that has to happen. I had done internships in the past, and I had done the harvest when I was younger. But I guess I really had to immerse myself into what it meant to make these wines, to feel that I could actually take over and do this.
Yes. And your father is still involved as well, a little bit?
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, good.
I call him a lot.
That's important. It's good. It's kind of a great partnership. What do you think from the past 2 years of being in this role has been your biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge, I guess, it's twofold. On the one side, it's Bordeaux. The image of Bordeaux, if we take the wines of Bordeaux, has really suffered from having this like pretentious tinge and this dusty feeling. So I guess for me, the one big challenge is, how do we re-enchant Bordeaux, and how do we make younger generations love Bordeaux and understand that it can be cool to go and open a bottle of Bordeaux, and it's not just because your parents used to do it that you shouldn't do it. So I guess that's the main challenge. It's actually talking to your customers and getting to connect with them to explain what we're doing. And then the other challenge is more on the viticulture side. It's really building the strategy for our vines around the world for the future and building them in a sustainable manner, and with the background of having climate change happen, because we can't really negate that it's happening and it is influencing a lot of our states. So those are really the two challenges. And the second one, the most important thing in wine, is you can't go fast. In the world, everything goes really fast. In winemaking, I make a decision, I will know in 10 years if it's the right decision or not.
Right.
So it's really planning ahead and having a vision for the long run. And that has been the big learning process for me.
Oh, that is very interesting. I do want to get talking about sustainability. Maybe when we get to the Pomerol, because I know you've done a lot with that estate. So we'll get there. So why don't we move on to tasting the wines, and then kind of as we go through each, we can talk a little bit about that estate and how your family's kind of become part of that place in the world. So like I said before, we have 4 wines coming from 4 different regions. The first one we're having is Château d'Ossière, which comes from the Languedoc. So the Languedoc region is a large one. It's absolutely a beautiful place, and it's right there next to the water, which is really lovely. And your father or your family acquired this estate, I think, in 1999, so about 2 decades ago. I'd love to know a little bit about what you've kind of seen in the past 20 years, or what your family has seen kind of in the past 20 years in growth for the Languedoc as a region.
So more specifically than Languedoc, we're in the Corbière region of Languedoc. And it's been really interesting because, as I was saying, that a wine region like Bordeaux has suffered a little bit from feeling like it's a bit from the past. Languedoc and Corbière have really seen a surge in popularity, and these wines have really been loved. And I think that has been really interesting to see, because there's been a qualitative leap in the way wines are made in that region that is absolutely enormous. And the real chance we have with Ossière, the area where we are, and that is why we decided to buy it, is that although we're in the southeast Languedoc region that is quite warmer and that has all the qualities that you need to make these great Languedoc wines, we're very close to the water, and we're in a place that's called Fonte Froide, which means cold front. And what that means is that we get very cold winds that come in from the sea. So we have these very fresh wines, and that's really useful. And there's a lot of wind. The people of the region, they call them the flat heads, because there's so much wind, they say that the heads flatten. And so that's really a good point, because we can look for the future with this estate. We just hired a new winemaker who actually used to manage our Chinese estate. So he just came in, and we've been converting the estate to organic farming for the past 2 years. So we're really looking to the future with Ossière, and it's been a great adventure.
And one thing about the Languedoc in general is there's a lot of flexibility, I guess, with the grape varieties you can use. So for d'Ossière, obviously we're having a Chardonnay here. What is your kind of, I guess, ratio of the wines you're making with the classic, Rhone, Southern France varietals versus those international varieties?
We're quite, for the reds, we're really working on the traditional Syrah, Mourvèdre, Carignan. And we're having great results with that, and really, really working hard on that. It's an estate that has been with us for 20 years, and we've completely restored the whole vineyard and replanted it. And so it's a lot of experiments on that, and on a few different international varietals, but really for the premium reds and the whites, we're quite traditional, and working with quite traditional varietals.
Okay, good. Well, I'm excited about trying the Chardonnay. It's one of my favorites. I think it's such a diverse grape that can be so many things from so many places. So let's taste through it. And if you could just kind of lead us through what to expect as we taste, that would be great.
Yeah. Well, what's great, and it goes back to what I was mentioning, is that in Ossière, we never have the temperatures go too high because of this cold front that protects us. And this Chardonnay, the good thing is that it was actually quite a precocious year, that we had to harvest quite early. And so you'll taste that it's very pungent in the way that it's very vivacious. Do you say in English?
Vivacious. Vivacious. Yes.
And it's not your typical very creamy and buttery Chardonnay. You have a little bit of wood because we do a little bit of élevage Choly, a tiny bit, but you have that real freshness, that real mouth, that watering mouth, that's almost a little saltiness.
Yeah, you're just salivating on the side. It's just so crisp.
And I really like the length of it. And I don't know if you feel it, but I feel like in the length, there's like a little bit of fennel seed, anise.
Anise.
That comes in. And so it gives you that little kick. And I think it's a great wine to have with oysters or with, I don't know, anything.
No, so that was going to be my next question, is your favorite pairings for food, because everybody's very interested in, we got a lot of questions beforehand, and I'm going to kind of answer some of those in between, but one was what food pairing. So, a lot of times wines that come from close to the ocean, close to the water, are often that perfect pair for some sort of seafood. So that's why you're saying oysters would be.
I just love oysters, so
So when we're drinking L'Evangile, you'd be like, oysters, definitely.
No, to be honest, I love oysters with Sauterne. It's something you should try.
Interesting. I've had fried oysters with Sauterne that was really good. Actually, I feel like anything fried with Sauterne is delicious.
Yeah, not a bad choice. But yes. No, actually this with a fried chicken can be absolutely delicious too. And
that's good to know. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you. I love this wine. I think it's a beautiful example of great Languedoc wine, and especially kind of showing that even though you're in this really warm region, being close to that coast, that cool influence can really make something that has that good acidity that still lasts. So, yeah. All right, let's go move down to South America. We're gonna head over to Argentina with the winery Caro, and we'll be tasting the Amancaya. Argentina is just such a stunning growing region because you've got the Andes and then a vineyard. So you've got this like snow and then a vineyard, and it's just so beautiful to see. And I know that this is a partnership between you, the Rothschilds, and also the Catena family, which are very well known and respected. There's Lara and her father Nicholas in Argentina. So how did that partnership come about? Because I think that was also 1999. Both of these two wines that we're tasting. That was 1999. How did that partnership come about? Who initiated it?
Well, I think interestingly enough, we always were quite curious of the Malbec grape, and Malbec being an ancient grape that used to grow in Bordeaux. There was always that curiosity, and my family was already in Chile, so it was, as you can see on the map, it's just a leap over the
large mountain range,
to go towards Argentina. And so I think it was also the fact to meet the Catena family and to see that we're both winemaking families, very different, but that out of differences you can make something strong. And the idea was that Malbec was great, but that it would be even better with Cabernet Sauvignon. So we came in with the project of making blended wines, and Caro and Amancaya are blends of Cabernet Sauvignon and Malbec. And it was always the project. It was always the project of blending two very contrasted grapes and actually making them together. So that was how it came along. I was lucky enough. I lived in Argentina for a year and a half in 2008. And so that's when I had the chance to meet Nicolas and his wife. I was a journalist at the time. And so I have a deep love for Argentinians and for the country in general, and deep love for the wines.
Yes, and they're wonderful. I actually visited Argentina once, and it happened to be in 2008. So it's a beautiful place, and I think it's so fascinating how well they do with Malbec when it's always kind of struggled a little bit. I don't know if struggle is the right word, but in Bordeaux, it's never necessarily been a major part of most blends. So putting these two together, now I know it's a Bordeaux blend, but it's kind of become known as an Argentine blend, having that Cabernet and Malbec together. So that's fantastic. And all of the wines, I know you make a few different wines. Are they all blends of Cabernet and Malbec, or do you have any single varietal?
Caro is the top and the premium wine. Amancaya is just the level underneath, and Amancaya means it's a very little flower that you find at the foothills of the Andes. So I think the name is quite poetic. And then Aroma, the third wine we make is only Malbec.
Oh, only Malbec. Okay. Okay. Interesting. This is great. Well, this almond kaya, I'm excited to try this. This is one of my parents' favorites. So I'm just going to tell you because it goes with everything. It's approachable. It's affordable, and it just kind of has all those things that one would want. So let's kind of taste through this and talk a little bit about how these two grapes go together.
Yeah. So once again, and it's kind of a line that we have throughout all the wines that we make in our family of estates. We always try to, our main objective is balance. We always construct our wines like if they were tightrope walkers, you know, that they have to like be really balanced between acidity and power and fruit, but never over the top. And so that's the key. And I think that this wine, Amancaya 17, is a great example of that, because it has that acidity, but that length that keeps on going. And the tannins are very soft and very long. And at the same time, you have that expression of fruit that a little bit, I don't know if you feel, but that it's quite fit. There's like a fig paste to it. Mm-hmm. And quite interesting because that comes from the Malbec grape, I think, most certainly. It has that little spice and that little kind of kick from it. And it's a wine that has mostly Malbec, only 33% Cabernet Sauvignon. But you see that putting them together really creates this balance that we're looking for.
Yeah, it's a beautiful wine. So on this one, I love that it's kind of on the purple color spectrum, which I always get from Malbec as well. What would you put with this wine? What would you eat with this? The pairing, perfect pairing.
Recently, I really like red wine with pizza, to be honest, but it's my Italian side because I'm half Italian, my mother's side. So no, I'd have it with pizza, with a great plate of pasta. We've been making homemade pasta in confinement, and I think that would be a great pairing, actually, to have it with a spaghetti al pomodoro. With something.
Well, it has such good acidity that would balance with the tomato sauce really well. Yeah. So yeah, I think, again, this is just such a wonderful, affordable, approachable wine that I feel like has many, many ways it can pair at a dinner table.
And it's also important, and it's something I always repeat. It's like, I don't think we need to be very pretentious about wine. You know, there's been a little bit of a tradition of saying, oh, you have to pair it with red wine or with something. I think we have to like have these with a barbecue open and like share it or have it sitting on the ground. It's really a wine that is easy going and easy to drink. And the main sign that a wine is good is that the glass will be finished early.
Yes, no, I absolutely agree. This is just kind of a great, think of like a neighborhood barbecue get together, and that's the kind of wine you want to open and enjoy.
Yeah.
So, okay, we're going to hop over the Andes, as you said, to go to Los Vascos. So Los Vascos, and you're in the Colchagua Valley here. So this is interesting to me because your father found this property back in 1988. Why was Chile on his radar back then? Because that it wasn't on many people's radar back then. Mm-hmm. So how did he think about investing there and getting there?
Well, what's interesting is that, as you said, in Chile at the time, there was no French investment. There was already a few Spanish people who had been there, and Los Vascos actually means the Basques. So it actually means that there was a family of Vascan people who had gone there hundreds of years before. So there was a little bit of a European influence, but he had the chance to meet Chilean friends, and he visited the country and fell in love with that plot of land. My father's a real fan of birds and nature, and so he found this area where at the time there was only about 100 hectares of vine.
Wow.
And he thought that it was an interesting place to develop a winemaking area because it was very fresh, and the difference, the climate difference between day and night is right, meaning that you can produce wines that will not be too strong. Once again, it was an area where you could reach that balance that we're always looking for. So that's why he chose to invest in the Colchagua Valley.
Okay, it's a beautiful place. So I do want to, I'm going to throw up, I went to Colchagua, or I went to Los Vascos, and I want to throw up a picture of the winemaker here, Marcello, pronounced Marcello. This is back in 2006, but this kind of represents how amazing it was to visit Los Vascos, because there was just, the people loved the wine, loved making the wines. The wines were delicious. It was so stunningly beautiful. You're looking out over all these mountainous, beautiful, just all the land was gorgeous. And Marcello was just such a joy. We even got him to play the guitar later after dinner. So I just wanted to throw up a throwback photo of him that he probably has no idea we have, but that's okay. So I'm glad he's still there.
Yeah, it's a real community, and it's what's interesting about Los Vascos is it's not just a wine estate. It's like it's first the size of it. It's 700 hectares, but surrounded with eucalyptus forest. We have bees, we have sheep, we have cherry trees. It's like a whole ecosystem around it, and the people have this very independent way of thinking and acting around this estate, and it's really how they cultivate this independence. They're Chilean, but they're also very much Los Vascan, and it's always very, very, very interesting to go there, and you learn a lot about the place and about the nature.
Yeah. So I want to taste through this wine. This is the Cabernet Sauvignon Reserve, Grand Reserve, correct? That we're tasting in our glass. So let's talk about this profile and how this kind of reflects Chile's, terroir, if you will.
Well, what's important to know about this Grand Reserve is we've been trying to produce this level of quality of wine for many years, and recently we really worked on planting the foothills of the valley to really go and look for complex soils that can produce very nice Cabernet Sauvignon and also very good Syrah. So it's really been the objective of this Grand Reserve, and that's what we've been looking for in producing this level of wine.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. I've had this before, but there's also kind of a lovely, in Chile, I often get a very similar kind of almost, I guess smoky is the word, almost kind of just a smokiness that comes off some of the reds that you get. It's very subtle, but it kind of speaks to, I feel like, just a Chilean red.
Completely.
You might have a better word for it.
There is that smokiness, and at the same time the expression of the Cabernet Sauvignon in Chile is so different from the one we have in Bordeaux, and it has that mint a little bit.
Yes, the eucalyptus. You just said like the eucalyptus trees.
Yeah, so that's not a myth. A lot of people always say, "Oh, it's a myth." The wines of Chile, they taste of eucalyptus because people like to say that, but it actually is true that
they do.
Feel that flavor come in because of the eucalyptus.
And the structure of this is softer. The tannins are really soft in this, I feel. And I love that. So would you pair this with pizza too? It's a good wine, yeah.
I love this with I don't eat a lot of meat. I used to eat more when I lived in Argentina, of course, but I love to pair this with just roasted vegetable, roasted zucchini.
Oh, that's good too. Because it does have that softness that would pair well with that. But yeah, no, this is also kind of one of those wonderful summer day, winter day. Just kind of open it up to go with anything.
Yeah, I think it's the Grand Reserve. I like to have it quite cold. It's a wine that I think
interesting.
Good to have, quite fresh.
Okay, well, let's head back to Bordeaux. We're going to go to L'Evangile. Blason de l'Evangile is the wine we'll have. We are in Pomerol. So this is on the other bank from your Lafite property here. And the vineyard has roots back to the 18th century, but I believe your family acquired it in 1990. So what drew Rothschild to come and go to the right bank, to go over to the Merlot side, if you will?
So it's a huge adventure, when you cross to the other bank.
The river, yes.
A whole other world, it's very different in the spirit and in the way people think. And that's why I absolutely love L'Evangile and Pomerol. I was lucky enough to do a lot of my internships while I was at university and also when I was younger in l'Évangile. So I have a deep link to that estate. What's good is that it's a small estate. There's only 8 people who work there. And so it's really at a size where it allows you to understand and capture how to make a great wine in a small estate. And it's a small appellation, Pomerol. There's only about 800 hectares. So it's like very human sized and very different from the left bank. So
which is very large.
It was quite an adventure to go there. And my father always says he had the 2 best decisions he made in his life was marry my mom and buy l'Évangile. So that's quite sweet.
That's a bold statement. That's good. There you go. So let's taste through this and kind of, as we do, maybe talk a little bit about the typical Pomerol characteristics. We had one of our viewers submitted a question about just kind of wanting to know what the typical Pomerol characteristics are.
So the typical Pomerol characteristics are to me, when I taste a good Pomerol wine, I always think of velvet. I always think of like this kind of velvet that like coats your mouth, and that's why Pomerol wines and the Merlot grape in general is often known as easier and maybe a bit more sensual than the Cabernet Sauvignon. And I think that on this wine, you really have that. You really have that feeling of this fresh red fruit that's coming through, and that is really coating your mouth. And at the same time, we're never forgetting the tightrope walker, so you always have that acidity and that kick, and it's never over the top. It's never too rich, you know?
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's really pretty. It is velvet. It's like velvet. It's beautiful.
And so the typicity of Pomerol would really be that Merlot grape, so that those fresh red fruit, strawberry, cherries, sometimes a little bit of spices, and also another one is I think maybe it's often wines that are a bit richer than on the other side, because Merlot is a grape that is more sensitive to heat. So it's been in recent years, it's been more sensitive to climate change. So it's often also a typicity of wines that can be a little bit richer. It's our job as winemakers to work on that and to work on the harvest dates and on the way we vinify to keep the wines be straight arrows.
Yeah. And speaking of climate change, I want to get back now to you talking about sustainability and kind of how you're moving forward with that, both in this vineyard, because I think you've converted everything now in the Vagile to, is it sustainable? Have you gone all organic? What have you been doing here?
It's been 3 years that we've actually converted the whole estate to organic farming. And it's been a big learning curve, because the first year we got frost. So that wasn't because of organic farming or not. But the first year of our actual conversion, we were hit by mildew, which is, a cryptogamic disease. And because there was a lot of humidity, and Bordeaux is a big challenge when converting.
Organic farming is a challenge in Bordeaux because
there's a lot of humidity. So we took that challenge and we really learned a lot from how that year had happened, and we really had the chance to see exactly how the year moved along. And then last year, which was actually a third year, we had a very, very good vintage, and we'd never produced so much grapes. So it showed that in a way we learned from our mistakes, and we learned from the way we were doing things, and we're really happy with how things are moving along. And it's an experience, and we're never always right. We're learning every day. So it's been really interesting.
And so that's that property. And you had mentioned that Dossier, you're also converting to organic. What about is that something you're aiming for with all of your properties?
Well,
organic, or how else are you approaching the sustainable / climate change challenge?
Well, in the US, you have an approach to organic that is a bit different than in Europe, because in Europe we have a certification that is quite strict, whereas in the US you can kind of be organic in many different certifications. But I guess now we're in with the objective of having all the French estates convert to organic from this year. So that has been really the big milestone that we recently took after having Auxerre and l'Évangile to take it. And it's never just about this kind of farming. It's really a holistic approach to just the ecosystem that surrounds a vineyard. And I mentioned that in Los Vascos, we have all these forests around here. It's the same in Lafitte. Lafitte is 100 hectares of vines, but it's 300 hectares of forests and trees and marshes and birds. And that is also a real part of what we do. It's like creating systems that are at the same time natural and at the same time social. Also, human beings who work there, have people be connected to the places they work at, have people be able to train the younger newcomers once they're older, help the retirees. And we have in Lafitte, we have a lot of retirees who still live in the little village behind where the chateau is, and they still live in the houses of the chateau. And that's also part of sustainability. It's like creating a community around each estate.
Yes, I love it. Sustainability being not just the land, but yes, with the people as well, how much they give. So I know we're 4:30, which is when we're supposed to leave, but for anybody willing to stay 5 more minutes for questions, hopefully you'll stay, Saskia, otherwise that would be difficult. We got a couple of questions that we had come in earlier and while we're doing this, so let me find them. Papers. All right. So Glenn from Virginia asked, what is it about each of the wine producing regions that drew Rothschild to invest there? And I think we talked a little bit about each of them, but maybe you have an overall thing of how you find something and say, aha, I want to go there.
Well, I think it's always key to, for us, more than a region, it's places. And we always look for things that are not obvious and for places where we think we can have an added value. So we're never going to buy a nice pair of shiny shoes. We're going to look kind of for a diamond in the rough, like Auxerre was an abandoned vineyard, abandoned village. And we thought, well, there's some opportunity there. There's some potential. So I guess that's the main thing. And the second thing is what I was touching upon before. It's always looking for regions where we can reach balance and where we can reach wines that we'll be able to love. And so that's the second point.
Tristan from Colorado asked, what is the most difficult thing managing brands being produced in different countries and different continents, for all that matter?
It's a lot of observation and a lot of learning from different areas. And we just launched the first vintage of our Chinese wine, and that has been a big experience because we planted the first vines there 10 years ago, and we're just releasing the wines. And so how the big challenge is actually to not come in with your big shoes and say, I'm the boss, I know everything. It's actually getting to somewhere and listening to people and listening to what they know about the area and being open-minded to change the way you were going to do things.
And Paula in Florida asked, do you have plans for any other investments in a new location or anything you've just recently done, I guess?
We're always open at looking at things. We just had this big release of our Chinese wine, so that has taken a lot of time and it was super exciting. And I had to spend a lot of time in China in recent years. So now that is launched.
Aoyun, am I pronouncing it right? Aoyun?
Long Dai.
Sorry. Okay. Long Dai. Okay. So is that here yet? Is that available? Is that available? Is that?
It's available in the US. It will be available from our importer. I think by by this fourth quarter of this year.
Okay.
So, we just got our export release. So
right. Oh, that'll be interesting to look forward to. Let me. Let's.
No, and for other regions, we're always looking. You know, there's very interesting things happening in the U.S. in certain regions. Very interesting things closer to home in the Loire Valley. I think that in France, there's great white wines being produced there. And then a third place that's a kind of personal dream of mine is to produce a wine in Ethiopia.
Oh,
I keep a very strong link to Africa from.
That's right, because you had visited. That's right. One question also, are your Los Vascos Cabernets, are those 100% Cabernet, or do you have a little bit of Merlot in the blend?
I think this one is 100%. Sometimes in the Grande Réserve we have a little bit of Syrah, and we add in some other varietals.
Okay. And we didn't get to the foods on the Pomerol. I've been reminded that we did not get to the food.
Okay, so this Pomerol is so the blend of it is just to say, because I think I saw that there's a question about it. It's I think 92 Merlot and 7%, 8% Cabernet Franc. And Cabernet Franc is a very interesting grape to have in a blend, and it's super useful. And with l'Evangile, one thing I love, and it's the main food we have when we're at the estate, is cooking a big steak on vine wood. So you take all the vine wood and you burn it, and you smoke the meat on there, and you have that with French fries and a glass of this, and that's pretty spectacular.
Leslie asked also, where in the U.S. would you want to produce wine, or would you ever want to produce wine in the United States?
Well, I think it'd be a real challenge to produce a wine we love in Napa Valley. It'd be interesting.
Yeah. Maybe you'd go to Oregon or Washington.
Also, I love wines from Washington State, and I love all those a little bit more atypical regions. But I think there's really interesting things to be done in Napa and the mountain vineyards. So that'd be fun too.
Yeah, the mountain vineyards are exciting. Let's see. Amelie asked if you make a Carmenere, I guess at Los Vascos.
We do. We make a Carmenere Grande Réserve. Right. Cabernet is a tricky grape, very interesting grape, and we've taken some time battling around it to really work with it, and we're now really happy with the Grande Réserve we produce there. So she should really try it.
Excellent. Yes, I have had that wine as well. And then let's see. We had one question a little bit, I'm not sure we can answer it, about from Sean about the regulatory differences in what signifies organic between the US and France. I just know here in the US, there are a couple of different organic certifications other than the USDA, because the USDA, when they certified it organic, it can't have any added sulfites, which most wines, even if they have organic practices in the vineyard and the winery, still end up having some either naturally produced as a byproduct or not. So in France, is there only one certification for organic?
Yeah, and it's actually European.
That's right, for the EU, I mean, yes, of course.
Yeah, so now we depend on the European Union certification. So there is only one. Afterwards, of course, once you're in the realm of organic certification, there's a lot of things you can do differently. We've been experimenting with biodynamie on 13 hectares here in Pauillac. We've been experimenting. You can experiment, as you mentioned, with using lower amounts of sulfites. But for now, the organic European certification is only one.
Okay, that makes it a little bit easier. Okay, well, we are running out of time, so we're going to wrap up. Thank you to everyone who's come. I'm so sorry if I didn't get to all of your questions. We had quite a few coming in, and I tried to grab as many as I could. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you will come back and watch on the wine.com YouTube channel. And Saskia, thank you so much for staying up late, talking about these wines, sharing your passion and your knowledge. And for everyone at home, please try, there's great champagne. I'm going to just point that out. So there are many wines from Domaine, Baron de Rothschild, and I encourage you to have them. So, and Saskia, I'm excited to see what comes about with the next few decades as you lead us into a new time of wine and sustainability and industry. So thank you. And cheers to everyone at home. Okay.
Thank you. Santé.
Allez, santé.
It's both a science and a form of high art. It's made from the combination of grapes, sunlight, rain, soil, and time. It's raised up in the moments that matter. It's wine. And we are wine.com. We have the largest wine selection in the world, online sommeliers with free advice, and now our powerful new app puts the entire world of wine in your hands. Wine.com, seriously passionate about wine. Download our free app today.